Captain Jake Miller stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, watching the massive alien planet grow larger on the main screen. 3 years of travel through space had brought them to this moment. The Zinthari homeworld looked like a giant blue, marble-covered in silver cities that sparkled in the light of twin suns. "Captain, we're getting their signal," reported Pete Clark from the communications station. "They're ready to receive us." Jake nodded and straightened his uniform. Named him, Dr. Lisa Kane checked her datapad for the 100th time. Spent months learning everything possible about Zinthari culture and biology. Her hands shook slightly as she reviewed her notes. "Nervous?" Jake asked her. "A little," Lisa admitted. "We've never met them face to face. All our contact has been through radio signals and data transmissions. They seem friendly enough," Jake said. "They invited us here." Amy Rogers, the team's language expert, looked up from her console. "Their translation technology is supposed to be perfect. They say they can convert their thoughts directly into any language we know." Jake had read the reports. The Zinthari were telepaths who could speak to each other with their minds. They had developed special machines to talk to species like humans who couldn't read thoughts. It sounded strange, but Jake had seen stranger things in his 20 years of space exploration. The ship's engines hummed as they entered orbit around the planet. Jake could see the enormous space station where the meeting would take place. It looked like a crystal flower floating in space, with long petals that caught and reflected starlight. "Docking request approved," Pete announced.
Guiding.
Us and Jake felt the ship change direction as alien computers took control. It was unsettling to let someone else fly his ship, but it was part of the protocol they had agreed to months ago. Trust had to start somewhere. An hour later, Jake and his team stood in the airlock, waiting for the doors to open. Lisa carried her translation device and a bag full of scientific instruments. Amy held a recorder to document everything they saw and heard. Pete stayed behind to monitor the ship's systems. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Jake stepped forward into a corridor that seemed to be made of pure light. The walls glowed with a soft blue radiance that didn't hurt to look at. The air smelled like flowers and rain. "Welcome, humans." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Jake looked around but saw no speakers. Then he remembered that the Zinthari could project their thoughts directly into the translation system. "Thank you," Jake said to the empty air. "We're honored to be here." 3 figures appeared at the far end of the corridor. They moved with a flowing grace that made Jake think of dancers. As they came closer, he could see that they were tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished metal. Their eyes were large and had many colors swirling in them like oil on water. The one in the center stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Veltar. I speak for the Zinthari Council in matters of contact with new species." Her voice came from the translation device on Jake's belt. It sounded pleasant and musical, but Jake knew it wasn't her real voice. Her real voice was thoughts projected directly into the minds of other Zinthari. "I'm Captain Jake Miller," he said. "This is Dr. Lisa Kane, our science officer, and Amy Rogers, our communications specialist." Ambassador Veltar's large eyes studied each of them. Jake felt like she was looking right through him. "You are as we expected. Your minds are." She paused, quiet. "It is strange for us to meet beings whose thoughts we cannot hear." Lisa stepped forward. "We understand that telepathy is normal for your species. We hope our lack of mental abilities won't be a problem." "Not a problem," the ambassador said. "Different, interesting. We have much to learn from each other." She gestured for them to follow her down the corridor. As they walked, Jake noticed that the walls showed moving pictures of Zinthari cities and landscapes. Mountains that looked like they were made of crystal, oceans that glowed with their own light, and forests of trees that seemed to be singing. "Your world is beautiful," Amy said, pointing at the images. "Thank you. We are proud of what we have built over many thousands of years." They entered a large room with a table in the center. The ceiling was transparent, showing the stars and the planet below. Others Zinthari were already seated around the table. They all looked similar to Ambassador Veltar, but Jake could see small differences in their height and the patterns on their metallic skin. "Please sit," the ambassador said. We'll begin with the formal greeting ceremony. Jake took his seat and tried to look diplomatic. He had sat through many boring meetings in his career, but this was different. This was history in the making. The first time humans and Xanthari had met in person. Ambassador Veltar closed her eyes and became very still. The other Xanthari did the same. Jake realized they were having a telepathic conversation. He could hear nothing but the soft hum of the space station's systems. Minutes passed, and more minutes. Jake glanced at Lisa, who was watching the aliens. With fascination, Amy was taking notes on her datapad. Jake tried to be patient, but he could feel restlessness building in his chest. The Xanthari remained motionless, their eyes closed. Jake had no idea what they were discussing or how long it would take. On Earth, meetings had agendas and time limits. Here, time seemed to move differently. More minutes crawled by. Jake shifted in his seat and tried not to look bored.
Yep.
Expected some ceremony, but this was getting ridiculous. Were they going to sit here all day while the aliens had a silent conversation? The Xanthari showed no signs of finishing their mental discussion. Jake felt his patience wearing thin. He had traveled 3 years to get here, and now he was watching a group of aliens sit in silence. It was like waiting for a computer to boot up, except the computer was an entire species. Blah blah, stop yapping, he muttered under his breath. Not thinking anyone could hear him, Lisa suddenly went rigid in her chair. Her eyes went wide, and she grabbed the edge of the table. She looked at Jake with an expression of pure terror. Jake frowned at her. You okay? But Lisa wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at Ambassador Veltar, whose large eyes had snapped open and were now fixed on Jake with an expression he couldn't read. Lisa's hands trembled as voices flooded her mind. Not voices exactly, but thoughts that felt like whispers made of ice and lightning. She could hear Ambassador Veltar's mental voice, cold and sharp with anger. The alien was thinking about Jake's. Rude comment, turning it over in her mind like a poisonous stone. The human thinks we are foolish chatterers. He mocks our sacred ceremony of mental joining. Does he not understand the honor we show him? Lisa pressed her fingers against her temples. The thoughts were getting louder, more painful. She could hear other Xanthari minds joining the mental conversation. Their thoughts crashed against her skull like waves against rocks. He shows no respect. Perhaps humans are truly as broken as we feared. Mental silence makes them cruel and thoughtless. Jake's voice seemed to come from very far away. What's wrong? She tried to answer, but more thoughts poured into her head. These were human thoughts now. Amy was wondering why Lisa looked so pale. Pete's voice came through the communication system from the ship, asking if everything was going well. Jake was thinking about how weird the aliens looked and hoping this meeting would end soon so he could get back to his ship. The worst part was that Lisa could feel the Xanthari picking up Jake's impatient thoughts. Ambassador Veltar's mental voice grew colder. Even now he thinks of leaving. He finds it strange and unpleasant. This is why the council warned against trusting the telepathically dead. Lisa wanted to scream. She could feel the diplomatic mission falling apart and she was powerless to stop it. The voices in her head were getting stronger, more painful. It felt like her brain was trying to tune in to 100 radio stations at once. I need some air, she managed to say, standing up too quickly. Her chair fell backward with a loud crash. The Xanthari opened their eyes and stared at her. Ambassador Veltar tilted her head to one side, studying Lisa with those swirling, colorful eyes. Dr. Kane experiences distress, the ambassador said through the translator. Perhaps the mental emanations of our world affect her differently than other humans. Jake stood up and put his hand on Lisa's shoulder. Are you sick? Do you need to go back to the ship? Lisa shook her head, though the movement made the voices louder. She could hear Ambassador Veltar thinking about her strange reaction. The alien was curious now instead of angry, which was somehow worse. Lisa felt like a bug under a microscope. I'm fine, Lisa lied, just tired from the long journey. But she wasn't fine. The voices were getting clearer, more distinct. She could tell which thoughts belonged to which person. Jake was worried about her, but also annoyed that she was disrupting the meeting. Amy was taking mental notes about everything she saw. Xanthari were having a rapid conversation about whether humans might be more telepathically sensitive than they had believed. One of the younger Zenthari, who hadn't spoken before, suddenly stood up. His thoughts hit Lisa like a slap. She hears us. The human female hears our thoughts. How is this possible? Ambassador Veltar's eyes widened. She stared at Lisa with new interest. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. What's interesting? Jake asked, looking back and forth between Lisa and the aliens. Lisa tried to back toward the door, but her legs felt like water. The mental voices were getting so loud she could barely think. She could hear the Zenthari's excitement, their amazement, their sudden hope. They thought she might be the answer to some problem she didn't understand. We must test her. If she truly has the gift, everything changes. Hey! No, Lisa whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was talking to Jake or to the voices in her head. Ambassador Veltar stood up slowly. Dr. Kane, may I ask you a question? Lisa nodded, not trusting her voice. What am I thinking right now? The answer came to Lisa as clearly as if the ambassador had spoken aloud.
Right.
She was thinking about a garden on the Zenthari homeworld, a place, with silver trees and purple flowers that sang in harmony. She was thinking about her childhood there, and about a decision she had to make that would affect both species. You're thinking about home, Lisa said quietly, about a garden with singing flowers, and about whether you can trust us. Jake stared at her. Lisa, how could you possibly know that? But Ambassador Veltar was smiling now, and her mental voice was warm with excitement. Lisa could hear her thoughts as clearly as spoken words. A breakthrough. After so many years of searching, we find one who can bridge the gap between our species. She is the key we have been seeking. This changes everything, the ambassador said aloud. We must speak privately, Dr. Kane. There are things you need to understand about your gift, and about why you are here. Gift. Jake stepped between Lisa and the ambassador. What gift? Lisa, what's going on? Lisa looked at him, seeing the confusion and worry in his eyes. She could feel his thoughts now, too, his protective instincts warring with his duty as a captain. He cared about her safety more than the success of the mission, and somehow that made everything worse. Jake, I can hear them, she said. I can hear their thoughts. All of them. The room fell silent, except for the hum of the space station's systems. Jake's face went through several expressions before settling on disbelief. That's impossible. Humans aren't telepathic. Most humans are not, Ambassador Veltar said. But Dr. Kane is not most humans. The mental field of our world has awakened something in her that was always there, sleeping. She is what we call a bridge mind. Lisa could feel the ambassador's thoughts explaining concepts that had no human words. A bridge mind was someone who could connect telepathic and non-telepathic species. They were incredibly rare and incredibly valuable. I don't want to be a bridge, Lisa said. I want the voices to stop. But even as she said it, she could feel the Zenthari's desperate need. Their thoughts showed her images of their civilization, beautiful but stagnant. They'd been telepathic for so long that they had forgotten how to think as individuals. They needed someone who could help them remember, and they needed her to convince them that humans were worth saving. Jake was still staring at her like she had grown a second head. Can you really read minds? Lisa nodded miserably. Yours too. You're thinking this is all crazy and you wish we had never come here. Jake's expression shifted from disbelief to something that might have been fear. Can you turn it off? I don't know how. Ambassador Veltar stepped forward. We can teach you. But first, we must speak alone. There are things about your species and mine that Captain Miller is not yet ready to hear. Lisa could feel the ambassador's thoughts hiding something important and dangerous. Something about why the Zenthari had really invited humans to their world. No, Jake said firmly. We're a team. Whatever you have to say, you can say it to all of us. But Lisa was already walking toward the ambassador. The mental voices were calling to her, pulling her forward. She had to understand what was happening to her, even if it meant leaving Jake behind. I'll be back, she told him, though she wasn't sure if that was true. As she followed Ambassador Veltar out of the room, Lisa heard Jake's thoughts one more time, clear and painful. I'm losing her. Whatever's happening, I'm losing her to them. Ambassador Veltar led Lisa through corridors that seemed to shift and change as they walked. The walls showed moving pictures of distant stars and alien worlds. Lisa tried to focus on the images, but the voices in her head made it hard to concentrate. "Private chamber is shielded," the ambassador said. "The mental noise will be less there." Lisa hoped that was true. Every step felt like walking through thick mud. The telepathic voices of hundreds of Zenthari filled the space station, and she could hear fragments of all their conversations. Most of it made no sense to her, but the emotions came through clearly: curiosity, excitement, fear. They entered a small room with curved walls that glowed with soft light. As soon as the door closed behind them, the voices became quieter. Lisa felt like she could breathe again. "Better?" Ambassador Veltar asked. "Much better, thank you." The ambassador gestured for Lisa to sit in one of the chairs that seemed to grow from the floor itself. "Now we can speak freely, or things you must know about your people and mine." Lisa sat down carefully. The chair adjusted itself to fit her body perfectly. "Jake thinks I'm losing my mind. Captain Miller does not understand what you are. Becoming few non-telepathic beings would. But you are not losing your mind. You are finding it." Ambassador Veltar's thoughts were clearer now, more controlled. Lisa could sense layers of meaning behind her words. The ambassador was very old, much older than she appeared. She had lived through centuries of Zenthari history. "Why did you really invite us here?" Lisa asked. "This isn't just about diplomatic contact, is it?" The ambassador's mental barrier slipped for a moment, and Lisa saw the truth. Images flooded her mind. The Zenthari civilization was dying. Not from war or disease, but from something worse. They had become so connected telepathically that individual thought was disappearing. Everyone thought the same thoughts, made the same decisions, had the same ideas. "We call it the Great Silence," Ambassador Veltar said aloud. "For 1,000 years, our minds have been joining more and more completely. We thought this was evolution, becoming one perfect consciousness, but we were wrong." Lisa saw more images. In the ambassador's mind, Zenthari scientists who could no longer think of new ideas because their minds were too connected to the group. Artists who painted the same pictures because they could only access shared memories. Inventors who stopped inventing because innovation required individual thought. "You're all becoming copies of each other," Lisa said. Double quotes, yes. "And we cannot stop it. The telepathic links grow stronger with each generation. Soon there will be no individual Zenthari left, only fragments of a dying collective mind." Lisa felt the ambassador's despair. Zenthari had spent decades searching for a solution. They had studied other telepathic species, but all of them had faced the same problem. Mental connection meant the death of creativity and growth. "That's why you contacted humans," Lisa realized. "You were looking for minds that work differently. You were looking for hope. Your species thinks in ways we have forgotten. You solve problems through individual insight and creative chaos. We hoped that studying you might help us remember how to be separate beings." Ambassador Veltar stood up and walked to the curved wall. Her thoughts showed Lisa more images. Human radio signals and data transmissions that had reached Zenthari space decades ago. The aliens had been amazed by the variety of human voices, the arguments and disagreements, the wild creativity of minds that couldn't read each other's thoughts. "But most of you are telepathically deaf," the ambassador continued. "We could observe you, but we could not truly connect with your minds, until now." Lisa understood.
How?
You need someone who can be both. Someone who can think like a human, but also connect with Zenthari minds. Bridge between worlds. Yes. You could teach us how to maintain individual thought while still connected to others. And you could help your people understand the benefits of mental connection without losing yourselves. The idea was fascinating, but also terrifying. Lisa could feel the weight of both species' futures pressing down on her. She was just a scientist who studied alien biology. How could she be responsible for saving two civilizations? "I don't know if I'm strong enough," she said. "You are stronger than you know. But there are dangers. It's the gift that awakens in you could grow beyond your control. You could lose yourself in the mental collective, just as we have. Or you could reject the telepathic connection entirely and become isolated from both species." Lisa thought about Jake and the rest of the human crew. She could still hear their thoughts faintly, even through the shielded room. Jake was worried. About her. was pacing in the meeting room, asking Amy and the other Zenthari questions they couldn't or wouldn't answer.
What about my captain, my crew? I don't understand what's happening.
Ambassador Veltar's thoughts showed concern. Captain Miller's dismissive comment revealed something important. He thinks our mental ceremonies are pointless chatter. But his mind also holds something we have lost. Lisa saw what the ambassador meant. Jake's thoughts were full of rapid decision-making, creative problem-solving, and adaptive thinking. His mind jumped from idea to idea in ways that amazed the telepathic observers. He doesn't think in straight lines, Lisa said. Exactly. Our minds follow predictable paths because we share the same mental framework, but human minds are chaotic, unpredictable. They make connections we would never consider. The ambassador showed Lisa more images from Jake's mind, his strategic thinking. During space emergencies, his ability to find solutions that no one else had considered. His protective instincts that drove him to risk everything for his crew. We have been studying all of you since you arrived, Ambassador Veltar admitted. Your thoughts are being monitored constantly. Lisa felt angry. You've been spying on us? We had to know if humans were truly different or just another failed species. Captain Miller's mind particularly interests us. It combines individual thinking with strong protective instincts. He makes decisions quickly, but considers the welfare of others. This is rare among the species we have encountered. The ambassador's thoughts revealed more disturbing information. The Zenthari had been testing hundreds of species for decades, looking for minds that could help them solve their collective consciousness problem. Most had failed the tests and been quietly discouraged from making contact again. What kind of tests? Lisa asked. Social situations designed to reveal thought patterns. We present challenges that require both individual creativity and group cooperation. Most species fail because they cannot balance both needs. Lisa realized that Jake's comment about blah blah stop yapping had been part of a test. The Zenthari had deliberately made their ceremony long and boring to see how humans would react. Jake's impatience should have been a failure, but instead, it had revealed something valuable about human thinking. You're not testing our manners, Lisa said. You're testing our minds. Yes, and you are the first species to show real promise, Dr. Kane. Your emerging telepathic abilities combined with your human perspective could be the key to saving both our civilizations. Lisa felt the weight of expectation from the ambassadors. Thoughts. But she also sensed something else. Fear. The Zenthari were desperate, running out of time before their individual consciousness disappeared completely. How long do we have? She asked. For my people, perhaps 50 years before the last individual mind is absorbed into the collective. For yours? That depends on how quickly you can learn to use your abilities. Lisa stood up, her legs still shaky. I need to talk to Jake. He needs to know what's really happening here. That may not be wise. Captain Miller's mind is strong, but undisciplined. Knowledge of our situation could affect his decision-making in unpredictable ways. He's my captain and my friend. I won't lie to him, Ambassador Veltar's thoughts showed reluctance, but also respect for Lisa's loyalty. Very well, but you must. Be careful how you share this information. The success of both our species may depend on how your captain reacts to the truth. As they walked back toward the meeting room, Lisa could hear Jake's thoughts growing stronger. He was planning contingencies for mission failure, preparing to evacuate the crew if necessary. His mind was sharp and focused, ready for action. Lisa realized that the ambassador was right about one thing. Jake's chaotic, unpredictable thinking might be exactly what the Zenthari needed to break free from their collective consciousness trap. But first, she had to convince him that saving an alien species was worth risking everything they had come here to accomplish. Lisa walked back into the meeting room with Ambassador Veltar behind her. Jake was standing by the window, staring out at the alien planet below. Amy was still taking notes, and Pete had joined them from the ship. The other Zenthari sat quietly. Around the table, their large eyes watching everything. Jake, Lisa said softly, "We need to talk." He turned around, and she could see the worry in his face. His thoughts were louder now, easier to read. He was thinking about emergency procedures and escape routes. He was ready to grab his crew and run if necessary. Are you okay? He asked. You look different. Lisa knew what he meant. She could feel the change in herself. The telepathic connection was getting stronger, making her more aware of everyone's thoughts and feelings. It was like seeing colors she had never noticed before. Changing, she said honestly. But I'm still me. Jake looked at Ambassador Veltar. What did you do to her? We did nothing, the ambassador replied. Dr. Kane's abilities were always present. Our world simply awakened them. Pete stepped forward. Abilities? What kind of abilities? Lisa took a deep breath. Can read minds now. Yours, theirs, everyone's. I can hear your thoughts.
Oh.
The room fell silent. Pete's mouth fell open. Amy stopped writing. Jake just stared at her. Prove it, Jake said quietly. Lisa could hear his thoughts clearly. He was thinking about his sister back on Earth, wondering if she had received his last message. He was worried about Lisa, but also excited about the possibility that humans might have telepathic potential. You're thinking about Sarah, Lisa said. Your sister. You're wondering if she got your message about the mission. Jake's eyes widened. How could you know that? Because I can hear you thinking it right now. Amy looked up from her notes. This is incredible. If humans can develop telepathic abilities, it changes everything we know about our species. But Lisa could hear what? Amy was really thinking. She was scared. The idea of someone reading her private thoughts terrified her. Pete was thinking the same thing. It's only Jake seemed more curious than afraid. Can you turn it off? Jake asked. I don't know. Ambassador Veltar says she can teach me to control it. Lisa looked around the room at her friends and colleagues. We're all thinking different things. But underneath it all was the same emotion. Fear. They were afraid of her now, afraid of what she had become. There's more, Lisa said. The Zenthari didn't invite us here just for diplomacy. They need our help. She told them everything.
They.
About the Great Silence and the dying civilization. About the tests and the search for minds that thought differently. About the bridge between species that she was supposed to become. Jake listened. Without interrupting, Lisa could feel his thoughts racing, putting together pieces of information, making plans. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. So they're dying, he said finally. Yes, Ambassador Veltar confirmed. Consciousness will disappear within 50 years if we cannot find a solution. And you think humans can help? Because we're not telepathic. Because you think differently than we do. Your minds make connections, ours cannot. You solve problems in ways we have forgotten. Jake walked to the table and sat down. Show me. Beg your pardon? Show me one of these problems you can't solve? Let's see what human thinking can do. Ambassador Veltar exchanged mental messages with the other Zenthari. Lisa could hear fragments of their conversation. They were debating whether to trust Jake with a real challenge. Very well, the ambassador said. We will present you with a scenario, a test, if you will. The walls of the room changed, showing a three-dimensional map of space. Lisa could see planets, space stations, and ships moving between them. It looked like a busy section of the galaxy with lots of traffic. Is a simulation, Ambassador, Veltar explained. A disaster scenario we have used to test crisis response capabilities. Multiple solar flares have damaged communication systems across 12 star systems. Millions of beings need to be evacuated, but coordination is nearly impossible. Jake studied the display. Lisa could hear his thoughts as he analyzed the situation. He was seeing patterns and possibilities that the Zenthari had missed. How do you usually solve this? Jake asked. One of the younger Zenthari spoke up. Telepathic Coordination Network. All rescue commanders join their minds to share information instantly. Decisions are made by mental consensus. How long does that take? For a crisis of this magnitude, approximately 6 hours to establish full consensus and begin coordinated evacuation. Lisa could feel Jake's reaction. 6 hours was far too long. For an emergency evacuation, people would die while the telepaths were discussing what to do. That's your problem right there, Jake said. You're trying to get everyone to agree before you act. In a crisis, you don't have time for committee meetings. He stood up and pointed at the display. Look, you've got 3 main evacuation routes here, instead of one big coordinated effort split into 3 smaller groups. Each group handles one. root independently. They don't need to coordinate perfectly. They just need to move fast. Ambassador Veltar's thoughts showed confusion. But without coordination, there will be inefficiencies. Some areas might be evacuated twice while others are missed entirely. So what? Inefficiency is better than total failure. If one group makes a mistake, the other two can still succeed. You're spreading the risk instead of putting all your eggs in one basket. Lisa watched the Zenthari minds working together, trying to understand Jake's approach. It went against everything they had been taught about problem solving. But she could see that it made sense. Also, Jake continued, "You're thinking too big. Instead of evacuating everyone to distant safe zones, look for temporary shelter closer to home. Asteroid mining stations, deep space platforms, even large ships. Get people to safety first. Sort out the long-term solutions later." He pointed to several locations on the map. These facilities could hold thousands of refugees each. It's not perfect, but it's fast, and it saves lives. Amy was taking notes furiously. It's completely different from how we usually handle emergencies. 2. We always try to plan for every possibility. Planning is good, Jake said. But sometimes you have to act fast and fix problems as you go. Perfect is the enemy of good. Ambassador Veltar was silent for several minutes, consulting with the other Zenthari. Lisa could hear their mental debate. Jake's approach seemed reckless to them, but they couldn't argue with the results. His strategy would save more lives than their careful consensus building. "Remarkable," the ambassador said finally. "Your solution is 73% more effective than our best coordinated response, okay? And it could be implemented in under 1 hour. Instead of 6, Pete whistled softly. "Not bad for a guy who just learned about the problem 5 minutes ago." Dumb. But Lisa could hear more in the Zenthari's thoughts. They were excited and terrified at the same time. Jake's mind worked in ways they found both fascinating and dangerous. His willingness to accept imperfection and risk went against their deepest instincts. "This is what we need, Ambassador," Veltar said. "This kind of thinking could help us break free from our collective patterns. But it also shows us how different our species truly are. What do you think? Can you help them? Learn to think like humans while still keeping their telepathic abilities." Lisa could feel the weight of both species' futures pressing down on her. The Zenthari needed to learn individual thinking to survive. But humans might also benefit from some level of mental connection. The bridge between worlds wasn't just about saving the aliens. It was about both species growing beyond their limitations. "I think we need to try," she said. "But we'll need more than just me. We'll need volunteers from both sides willing to experiment with new ways of thinking." "Count me in," Jake said immediately. Lisa could hear his thoughts. He wasn't just volunteering out of duty. He was genuinely excited about the possibility of mental connection, even though it scared him. His mind was already racing with ideas about how human and Zenthari thinking could work together. "This is dangerous, Ambassador," Veltar warned. "Mental connections between different species have never been attempted. The risks are unknown." "Everything worth doing is dangerous," Jake replied. "The question is whether the benefits outweigh the risks." Lisa looked around the room at her friends and the alien diplomats. Everyone was scared, but everyone was also hopeful. They were about to attempt something that had never been done before. She just hoped they were strong enough to survive what came next. 2 days later, Lisa found herself alone with Ambassador Veltar in a different chamber deep inside the space station. This room was smaller and darker, with walls that seemed to absorb sound. The ambassador had requested a private meeting, and Lisa could sense the urgency in her thoughts. "There is something I have not told you," Ambassador Veltar said. "Something the Council does not know I am sharing." Lisa sat down carefully. Her telepathic abilities had grown stronger over the past 2 days, and she found it easier to focus. On individual minds now, the ambassador's thoughts were heavy with guilt and fear. "What is it?" Lisa asked. "We are not just dying slowly. The Great Silence is accelerating. What I told you about 50 years was optimistic. Recent calculations suggest we have perhaps 10 years before the last individual consciousness disappears forever." The words hit Lisa like cold water. Through the ambassador's mind, she could see the real data. Zenthari birth rates were dropping because young minds were being absorbed into the collective. before they could fully develop individual personalities. Artists and scientists were becoming copies of each other at an alarming rate. Why didn't you tell us this before? Because the council believes that desperation makes for poor decisions. They wanted you to choose to help us freely, not because you felt pressured by our approaching extinction. Lisa could feel the ambassador's deeper thoughts. There was more to it than that. The Xanthari Council was split on whether to trust humans at all. Some members believed that contact with non-telepathic minds might make their condition worse, not better. Some of your people don't want our help, Lisa said. They fear contamination. Now they believe that exposure to chaotic human thoughts will destroy what remains of our mental harmony. They see Captain Miller's mind as proof that humans are dangerously unpredictable. Lisa thought about Jake and his rapid-fire problem-solving style. Two minds that valued careful consensus, his approach probably did seem chaotic and reckless. But it was also effective in ways the Xanthari had forgotten how to be. Are they right? Could human thinking make things worse for you? Ambassador Veltar was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her mental voice was heavy with doubt. I do not know. But I know that without change, we will certainly die. Sometimes the cure is as dangerous as the disease. Through the ambassador's thoughts, Lisa saw images of Xanthari society as it had once been. Individuals with distinct personalities. Artists who created new and surprising works. Scientists who made breakthrough discoveries through personal insight. It had been a vibrant, creative civilization. What happened to make you all so connected? Lisa asked. We thought it was evolution. Each generation was more telepathically gifted than the last. We celebrated this as progress, as the next step in our development. We did not realize we were losing ourselves until it was almost too late. The ambassador showed Lisa more images. Xanthari children who could barely form individual thoughts because they were immediately connected to adult minds. Families where everyone shared the same opinions and feelings. A society where disagreement had become almost impossible. It sounds peaceful, Lisa said carefully. Peace without growth is death. We have achieved perfect harmony at the cost of everything that made us alive. Lisa felt her own mind changing as they spoke. The constant exposure to Xanthari telepathy was making her more connected to their collective consciousness. She could feel the pull of their shared thoughts, the seductive comfort of never being alone with her own mind. I think I understand now, she said. It's happening to me too. The more time I spend here, the more I want to join your mental network completely. And that is the danger Captain Miller faces as well. His mind is strong, but prolonged exposure to our telepathic field could change him in ways we cannot predict. Lisa thought about Jake back on the ship. He had been acting strangely since yesterday, more distant and thoughtful, she had assumed. He was just processing everything they had learned. But now, she wondered if something else was happening. How long before he's affected? Unknown. Some minds resist longer than others. But eventually all conscious beings in our presence begin to show changes. You have lasted longer than most because your latent telepathic abilities provide some protection. A new fear crept into Lisa's mind. What about Amy and Pete? Are they in danger too? Less immediate danger, but yes. We should have warned you sooner, but we were afraid you would refuse to help us if you knew the risks. Lisa stood up and began pacing. The ambassador's revelations changed everything. They weren't just trying to save the Xanthari civilization. They were racing against time before the human crew was absorbed into the collective consciousness as well. There has to be a way to help you without losing ourselves, she said. Perhaps. But it will require something that has never been attempted. A controlled telepathic connection that allows for mental contact without complete integration. Through the ambassador's thoughts, Lisa saw what she meant. Instead of the total mental merging that Xanthari normally experienced, they would need to create partial connections, bridges between minds that could be opened and closed at will. Can that be done? We do not know. The theory exists, but it has never been tested. The risk is enormous. If the connection becomes too strong, both minds could be trapped in permanent merger. If it is too weak, no real communication or learning can occur. Lisa thought about Jake and his willingness to volunteer for dangerous experiments. He had no idea what he was really agreeing to do. I have to tell him the truth, she said. That may not be wise. Captain Miller's mind is already showing signs of telepathic influence. Learning about the time pressure and the risks could cause him to make rash decisions. But Lisa was already moving toward the door. She could feel Jake's thoughts calling to her from across the station. He was in the ship's command center, planning something. His mental voice was different now, more focused, but also more distant.
Right.
Changing already, she said. I can feel it. Ambassador Veltar followed her out of the chamber. Dr. Kane, you must be careful. If Captain Miller attempts to form a telepathic link before we understand how to control it, the results could be catastrophic for both of you. They hurried through the corridors toward the docking bay. Lisa could hear more voices in her head now. Pete and Amy were also showing signs of mental change. Their thoughts were becoming clearer to her, more accessible. The telepathic field was affecting the entire human crew. How do we stop it? Lisa asked as they walked. We cannot stop it completely, but we can try to guide it. If we can establish controlled connections before the natural process takes over, we might be able to maintain individual consciousness within a limited telepathic network. They reached the ship just as alarms began sounding. Telepathic link. Lisa could feel Jake's urgent thoughts. Something was happening, a real emergency, not a simulation. Solar storm incoming. Pete's voice crackled over the communication system. Massive electromagnetic pulse heading for the station. We need to evacuate now. Lisa felt her heart racing. This was exactly the kind of crisis Jake had theorized about. A situation where quick decisions and individual action would be more valuable than careful telepathic consensus. This is our chance, she told Ambassador Veltar. If we're going to try a controlled telepathic link, it has to be now. We need Jake's quick thinking and your people's coordination abilities working together. The ambassador's mental voice was filled with fear and hope in equal measure. The risk is enormous. If the link fails during the crisis, both our species could be lost. And if we don't try, we'll definitely be lost, Lisa replied, echoing Jake's words from earlier as they ran toward the ship's bridge. Lisa could feel the moment approaching when everything would change. They were about to attempt something that had never been done before. A mental bridge between species that could either save both civilizations or destroy them completely. She just hoped. Hey. Jake was ready for what was coming next. Jake stood at the ship's command console, his fingers flying over the controls as he analyzed the incoming solar storm. The readings were worse than anything he had seen before. Massive waves of radiation were racing toward the station, and they had less than 2 hours before the electromagnetic pulse would fry every electronic system in the area. How bad is it? Lisa asked, as she and Ambassador Veltar rushed onto the bridge. Bad enough, Jake replied without looking up. The station's shields won't hold against this much energy. We need to evacuate everyone to the far side of the planet. But there are over 10,000 Zenthari on board. Pete was working at another station, coordinating with the ship's systems. Station has evacuation ships, but not nearly enough for everyone. And the Zenthari are trying to form a consensus about evacuation priorities. At this rate, they'll still be discussing it when the storm hits. Lisa could hear the Zenthari minds across the station, their thoughts swirling in confused circles. As they tried to reach agreement, the approaching crisis had made their telepathic network more chaotic, not more efficient. Too many voices were trying to coordinate at once. They're panicking, she said. The stress is making their collective consciousness break down. Ambassador Veltar's mental voice was tight with fear. Without proper coordination, many will die. Our evacuation procedures require careful telepathic planning. Jake finally looked up from his console. Then we need to do this differently. Lisa, you said you can create controlled telepathic links. Can you connect me to their network? Jake? No, it's too dangerous. If the link goes wrong, if we don't try, people die. That's not acceptable. Lisa could feel his determination, as solid and unshakable as a mountain. Jake had made his decision with the same quick certainty he brought to every crisis. He wasn't going to change his mind. The process is untested, Ambassador Veltar warned. You could lose your individual consciousness completely. Or the shock of human thoughts could disrupt our network entirely. Then we better get it right the first time, Jake said. What do I need to do? Lisa looked at the ambassador, then back at Jake. Through her telepathic abilities, she could feel time running out. The solar storm was getting closer, and the Xanthari evacuation was stalled in endless mental debates. "Sit down," she told Jake, "and try to keep your mind as open as possible." Jake sat in the captain's chair and closed his eyes. Lisa placed her hands on his temples, feeling the familiar electric tingle of telepathic contact. Ambassador Veltar moved to stand behind them, her own mental powers ready to guide the connection. "I'm going to link your mind to mine first," Lisa explained. "How?" "Then we'll try to extend the connection to the Xanthari network. You'll be able to hear their thoughts and share your own, but you need to stay focused on who you are." "Got it?" Jake said. "Let's do this." Lisa opened her mind and reached out to Jake's consciousness. His thoughts rushed into her awareness like a flood of clear water. She could feel his tactical thinking, his protective instincts, his absolute determination to save everyone on the station. "Lisa," Jake's voice sounded different now, both spoken and mental. "I can hear you thinking, and I can hear you. Now we add the ambassador." Ambassador Veltar joined their mental link, and suddenly, the connection exploded into something much larger. Lisa could feel the vast network of Xanthari minds, thousands of voices all talking at once. But instead of chaos, Jake's presence seemed to organize the thoughts into manageable streams. "This is incredible," Jake's mental voice said. "I can see what everyone is thinking, but I can still think for myself." Through the link, the Xanthari could experience Jake's rapid decision-making process. His mind worked differently than theirs, jumping from problem to solution without getting stuck. In careful analysis, the aliens were amazed by the speed and creativity of human thought. "We need to split the evacuation into zones," Jake's thoughts projected to the network. "Each zone operates independently. No waiting for perfect coordination. Just move fast and fix problems as we go." The Xanthari minds recoiled from the idea at first. Independent action, without consensus, went against everything they had been taught. But through the telepathic link, they could feel Jake's confidence and understand his reasoning. "Zone commanders, sound off," Jake continued, his thoughts reaching. "Across the station, I need volunteers to lead evacuation groups. You'll have full authority to make decisions without consulting the network." Slowly, individual Xanthari voices began responding. Young minds that had been overshadowed by the collective consciousness suddenly found the courage to speak up. They could feel Jake's support through the link, his belief that they could think and act independently. "Zone 1 ready," came the first response. "Zone 2 ready. Zone 3 ready." Lisa watched in amazement as the Xanthari evacuation network transformed itself. Instead of one massive, slow-moving collective decision, they now had multiple small groups that could act quickly and adapt to changing conditions. Jake's human thinking had given them permission to be individuals again. "Evacuation ships launching," Pete reported from his station. "They're moving 3 times faster than their original estimates." Through the telepathic link, Lisa could feel the excitement spreading through the Xanthari network. The first time in generations, they were thinking as individuals while still connected to each other. The great silence was breaking apart, replaced by a harmony of distinct voices. "Amy, coordinate with the ship captains," Jake ordered, his thoughts reaching both human and alien minds. "Pete, monitor the storm's progress. Ambassador, I need your people to guide the ships to safe orbit on the far side of the planet." The bridge became a blur of activity as both species worked together. Human quick thinking combined with Xanthari coordination abilities proved incredibly effective. Problems were identified and solved almost instantly as different minds contributed their unique perspectives. "Storm hits in 30 minutes, Pete announced. "All evacuation ships are clear of the danger zone." "What about us?" Amy asked. Jake's mental voice was calm and confident. "We ride it out in the ship's storm shelter. The horizon is built for this kind of thing." As the last evacuation ship cleared the station, Lisa felt something changing in the telepathic network. The connection between Jake and the Xanthari was stabilizing, becoming less forced and more natural. Both species were learning from each other without losing their essential nature. "The link is holding," Ambassador Veltar said with wonder. "You maintain your individual human consciousness, while connected to our network. This should not be possible. Maybe that's because you were thinking about it wrong, Jake replied. You don't have to choose between individual thought and group connection. You can have both. The solar storm hit the station like a hammer blow. Through the ship's sensors, they watched as electromagnetic pulses fried the station's outer systems. But the people were safe, evacuated to the far side of the planet, where the massive world itself provided protection. We did it, Lisa said, hardly believing it was true. We actually did it. Through the telepathic link, she could feel the joy and amazement of thousands of Xanthari minds. They had remembered what it felt like to be individuals, while still being connected to something larger than themselves. The great silence was broken. This is just the beginning, Ambassador Veltar said. We must teach others what we have learned here. Both our species can benefit from this new form of connection. Jake opened his eyes and looked at Lisa. The telepathic link was still there, but quieter now, like a radio playing softly in the background. He was still himself, but he was also connected to something larger. So what happens now? He asked. Now we go home, Lisa said, and we share what we've learned. Some humans will want to develop telepathic abilities. Some Xanthari will want to learn individual thinking. We'll build bridges between our worlds. And my comment about blah blah stop yapping? Jake asked with a grin. Ambassador Veltar's mental laughter filled the link. Perhaps that comment saved both our civilizations. Sometimes the most important conversations begin with someone speaking their mind. As the Horizon prepared to leave orbit, Lisa looked back at the Xanthari homeworld. The crisis had passed, but the real work was just beginning. Both species had learned that they didn't have to choose between unity and individuality. They could find a way to have both. The universe was about to become a much more interesting place.